There's only one place that I would trust my daughter, and that is with my own family, meaning the McMahon family and the WWE.
The signing of fourth-generation superstar Simone Johnson has some fans excited at the prospect of seeing The Rock's daughter in the WWE, while others are questioning whether she had an unfair advantage due to her famous father. Join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at nepotism in wrestling. Is it good or bad? Nepotism is the practice of showing favor or patronage to family and, to a lesser extent, friends in business, is as old as time. Nevertheless, it's earned its reputation as something to be avoided or used cautiously. The saying, "we promote family values almost as much as we promote family members," is familiar to anyone who works in an office or other businesses where family members tend to rise the corporate ladder regardless of talent. As we'll see, wrestling is no stranger to nepotism, and the results haven't always been pretty. Nepotism has been around as long as wrestling promoters have had sons they wanted to push in the ring, sometimes with good results, but other times awful results. It's only common sense that if the reason for someone being pushed is their relation to the promoter, rather than talent, there are going to be problems whether it's with other wrestlers or the fans. Let's take a look at one of the all-time classic examples of nepotism gone wrong, George GULAS. You're probably asking who in the blue hell George GULAS is, and while he's not a household name, his promoter daddy sure tried to make him one. George was the son of promoter Nick GULAS, whose NWA Mid-America territory was just one of many successful NWA territories during the NWA's heyday, that is until Nick started over pushing his son. By most accounts, George had no business being in the ring, but that didn't stop his dad from pushing him to the top, including a time limit draw with the then NWA World Heavyweight Champion Harley Race, angering the talented wrestlers who were getting set aside to make space for George. This eventually led to wrestlers Jerry Jarrett and Jerry the King Lawler leaving NWA Mid-America to form their own promotion, eventually putting GULAS out of business. But what of another son of a successful promoter? Well, Shane McMahon is an example of both how nepotism can work when done right and how it can fail when it's overdone. When Shane began working as a wrestler in the WWF, fans enjoyed his work. Shane was young and hip, and unlike some of the names on our list, he worked his tail off, taking sick bumps and doing whatever was necessary to put on a good match. Arguably the best thing about Shane's push in the WWE was that the promotion knew he was best used in limited doses. Shane would appear for a program, then disappear for months or years at a time. However, Shane's last run shows what happens when nepotism goes wrong. As the WWE deals with its ever-dwindling television ratings and other indicators of decreased fan interest, the promotion decided to bring Shane back. The problem this time was that they pushed Shane to the moon, giving him way too much television time and far too many wins over top stars. Thanks to the WWE's ill-fated wildcard rule, Shane was appearing on both Raw and SmackDown, further infuriating fans. At one point, it appeared Shane was being primed for a run with the WWE Championship, then held by Kofi Kingston. After intense go-away heat and rumors of locker room grumblings over Shane's prominent spot on the card, the WWE finally sent him packing. Kayfabe-wise, that is, taking him off television full-time. Nepotism is a part of life, but where it becomes a problem is where someone lacking talent gets promoted over someone who does. We've seen that with the previous two examples, and we also see it with wrestlers whose push is far above their talent level. Here are a few examples. Number 1. Greg Gagne. The son of AWA promoter Vern Gagne, Greg was a competent wrestler, but he lacked size and charisma. He did very well for himself when he teamed with Jumping Jim Brunzell as the High Flyers, winning the AWA World Tag Team Championship. However, when Gagne went into solo action, nobody bought him as a contender for the AWA World Heavyweight Championship. Vern Gagne tried repackaging Greg as Sergeant Slaughter's protege, but the fans dismissed it and laughed at him. At one point, Vern considered putting the title on his son, but rumor has it that wrestlers made it clear they wouldn't tolerate it. Greg's value in the ring became clear when Vern tried selling the AWA with the condition that Greg be used, something which proved a deal breaker. Number 2. Erik Watts. Erik Watts' push was one of the lowlights of Bill Watts' tenure as WCW booker, besides banning moves off the top rope, slashing wrestlers' salaries and removing the protective padding from ringside. In Erik's case, it wasn't that he was a complete washout as a wrestler. Although he was by no means the next big thing, it was that Daddy Bill pushed him far beyond his capabilities or his experience. ERIK feuded with WCW's Dangerous Alliance, and although he never won any championships in the promotion, his push during his dad's reign was criticized. ERIK won 3 Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards in 1992, that being Most Overrated Wrestler, Reader's Least Favorite Wrestler, and Most Disgusting Promotional Tactic, being pushed by WCW. When ERIK's dad got canned by WCW, Watts continued working there but dropped to the lower card. Watts continued wrestling but never reached the level he did in WCW when his dad booked the company, a clear sign that his push exceeded his talent. But that's when nepotism doesn't work. What about when it does? As there are good reasons for a promotion to push his sons, and in few cases daughters. First and foremost, it gives a promoter security in that he knows his family members are much less likely to walk out on him and grumble about their storylines. Keep in mind that nepotism in wrestling happened before the days of guaranteed contracts. For example, Stu Hart had a small army of family members to push in his Calgary Stampede promotion, ranging from moderately talented to true stars like Owen and Bret Hart. Likewise, Fritz von Erich pushed his sons as his world-class championship wrestling promotion's top babyfaces. In Von Erich's case, his son David was considered a premier talent and at one point was slated to win the NWA World Heavyweight Championship until his tragic death at the age of 25. Luckily though, Kerry was talented enough to win the belt and hold it briefly. Von Erich's other sons Kevin and Mike were good, although Mike was never the same after an almost fatal case of toxic shock syndrome which caused permanent brain damage. The youngest Von Erich, Chris, just wasn't big enough and couldn't cut it in the ring despite his best efforts. The problem with the Von Erichs wasn't so much how hard Fritz pushed them, because they were over big with the fans, but how much he pushed them behind the scenes, controlling their lives to the point where all Von Erich brothers save Kevin died at an early age. There's also the case of nepotism being a case of, it's not what you know, it's who you know. There's little question that having a famous relative will make it easier for you to break into the business. The problem is when a wrestler either lacks the talent or is being pushed beyond their talent. This was seen when WCW began promoting David Flair, the son of Nature Boy Ric Flair. David lacked Slick Rick's charisma, was limited in the ring, and lacked the size associated with wrestlers at the time. David debuted at the age of 20 and was quickly pushed in the mid to upper card, but there were reservations about his ability to perform at that level other than relying on his dad's fame. When WCW folded, David trained in the WWE, but his career never went anywhere. He finally retired from the ring and has a successful career in law enforcement. David Flair is probably the best known example of someone whose famous last name got him a big break, but he's by no means the only one. Some have been successful, some failures, and others somewhere in the middle. David Sammartino. David Sammartino enjoyed a modest push in the WWF thanks to Bruno Sammartino's willingness to work as color commentator for the WWF and get back into the ring occasionally. David's skills were limited, and while he occasionally wrestled upper card matches, usually when he teamed with his father, he largely wrestled curtain jerkers. He continued wrestling, but now focuses on working as a personal trainer. Jeff Jarrett. Jeff Jarrett is an interesting case because he got his initial push in wrestling thanks to promoter dad Jerry Jarrett, but he would not find lasting success until he ventured out on his own. While Jeff's early work in Memphis wrestling earned him some well-deserved accusations of being over-pushed thanks to his name, he improved over time, eventually getting himself over in the WWF with his country music singer gimmick. While Double J has been criticized for being over-pushed where he's worked, he main evented in WCW and TNA, including numerous World Championship runs, and was inducted into the 2018 WWE Hall of Fame. Curtis Axel. Third-generation superstar Curtis Axel never tried to live off his dad Kurt Mr. Perfect Hennig's name, instead trying to succeed in the ring on his own. Axel, aka Joseph Hennig, has had modest success in the WWE, winning the Intercontinental Championship and Raw Tag Team Championship 2 times. Axel is an example of someone whose family connections got him in the door, but who had to succeed on his own, albeit doing so modestly. Rocky Maivia. Dwayne Johnson is the epitome of a would-be wrestler getting into the business thanks to family connections, but he also shows both the dangers of nepotism for a wrestler and the challenges they face due to perceived nepotism. There's little doubt that Dwayne Johnson had the skills and look, although the charisma was still untested, to succeed as a WWF superstar. In his case, he had to overcome a terrible gimmick, a smiling babyface who might have worked in an earlier era but not in a WWF that was evolving into the Attitude Era, and being pushed down the fans' throats. Johnson worked hard though, well aware some fans thought he was being pushed due to his daddy Rocky Johnson's name. Johnson ultimately proved himself not only as a main event megastar, but as a Hollywood icon. While your last name can get you in the door, it puts a burden on you and it's ultimately up to you to succeed, something The Rock did through hard work and a refusal to give up. And Charlotte Flair. After the disastrous career of David Flair and the tragic drug-related death of Reid Flair, fans more or less wrote off any chance of seeing one of Ric Flair's children carry on his incredible legacy. Enter Charlotte Flair, who signed with the WWE, and while she undoubtedly benefited from being a Flair, they made sure she succeeded on her own in NXT, barring her from using the Nature Boy's catchphrase. By the time Charlotte hit the main roster, she was an established star and quickly became one of the WWE's top women, winning 10 World Championships. While Ric Flair briefly worked with Charlotte in her main roster career, the Queen excelled on her own, doing what many fans thought was impossible, matching her famed father's in-ring career. In the end, would-be wrestlers that come from famous families do have an advantage. However, they also have the disadvantage of having to work twice as hard to prove themselves, and they have the sometimes impossible task of living up to or even coming close to their famous family members' achievements. Just imagine what things will be like for Simone Johnson as she tries to make a name for herself, living in the shadow of one of the greatest wrestlers of all time. Like her dad, she will have to succeed on her own, enjoying quicker access into the WWE thanks to her famous name, but ultimately proving herself based on talent, hard work, and a good attitude. But there you have it, guys, our look at nepotism in wrestling. Do you guys think it's a good thing, a bad thing, or something to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis? Let us know your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.